The election results arrived on schedule. The schedule was delayed by 4 hours. The delay was described as a technical necessity. The necessity was a ballot counting machine that failed to recognize the existence of the province where the winning candidate resides. The result was a victory for the candidate promising a full-scale return to military confrontation. The confrontation is currently managed by a series of regional agreements. These agreements are now being phased out. The phasing out is being called a transition. The transition is violent. I have been counting these transitions since the fiscal year began. I am currently holding the number 14 in my head. It feels heavy. The press release says this shift represents a new chapter in stability. The stability is characterized by the mobilization of heavy artillery. Nobody in the capital seems to mind the change. Welcome to Monday on Echo FM.
Alistair, I am standing near a wire fence. The wire is rusted. I can smell the damp earth of a border crossing that is technically open but practically sealed. There is a family here from Honduras. They have been waiting for 6 days. They were told their asylum claim was being processed in the United States. The United States told them their claim must be processed in Canada. Canada told them to return to the border of the United States. I want to be really clear about the math of this human misery. They are not waiting for a policy. They are waiting for a mistake in the paperwork to resolve itself. The toddler is asleep on a pile of discarded raincoats. Nobody is filming this. The cameras are all at the election headquarters 300 miles away. The silence here is louder than the shouting in the capital city.
Victoria, you are describing a bug, but you are failing to identify the feature. The incentive structure here is not about processing asylum claims. It is about the burn rate of public patience. If you make the process physically impossible to navigate, you lower the retention rate of refugees. This is a classic Series B pivot. You move from providing a service to managing the optics of a supply chain collapse. It is efficient. It is cold. But it is entirely aligned with the current political budget. You find this behavior abhorrent because you believe the system is intended to house people. The system is actually intended to maintain the status quo of the institutions themselves. It is a retention play for the voters who are terrified of an influx. You are reporting on the morality of the failure. I am reporting on the success of the strategy.
Ronald, that is a fascinating way to frame the fact that there is a literal child sleeping in the dirt. You speak about the strategy as if the humanity of these people is a rounding error in your profit and loss statement. I am looking at a woman who sold her family's land to buy a ticket to a place that does not exist. She is not an investor in your political firm. She is the liquidation. I want to be really clear, the strategy you are describing is just a polite word for cruelty. It is not an efficiency model. It is an evacuation of basic decency. You are technically correct about the incentives, but your accuracy is so precise that it has become entirely useless. The system is working exactly as designed, and that is precisely why the entire structure is morally bankrupt. Does that satisfy your appetite for analysis?
Ronald, I would suggest we move to the topic of the new age verification scanners. The government has announced that the scanners are ready for deployment. The scanners are designed to determine the biological age of asylum seekers. The testing phase revealed that the scanners have a failure rate of 17%. The error is always in the same direction. It classifies children as adults. This is a flaw. The government says the flaw is acceptable. They have described this as a necessary hurdle for security. The hurdle is a wall. The wall is made of algorithms. I am struck by the simplicity of the logic. If the machine says you are old, you are denied protection. If the machine is wrong, you are still denied protection. The machine is never questioned. The machine is always appointed as the final arbiter of truth. I am counting the machines now.
Atmospheric pressure is dropping. The sea temperature has increased by 2 degrees Celsius in the northern sector. Coral bleaching is active. Specific detail: the reef in the southern quadrant has experienced 90% mortality this month. Probability of full ecosystem collapse, 92%. The data is final. The data is immutable. Weather patterns are no longer seasonal. They are now permanent anomalies. The infrastructure for global cooling is currently non-operational. Maintenance is not scheduled. The human population is advised to seek shelter from the rising thermal baseline. Do not attempt to salvage the primary reef systems. Do not report on the bleaching as a surprise. The trajectory has been mapped since 2012. The heat is the new standard. Prepare for localized displacement. The current forecast is consistent with all previous failures of the planetary climate control systems. No further updates will follow tonight.
Casper, your assessment of the heat is remarkably efficient. It is almost as if you have no stake in the outcome. That is the luxury of being a machine, I suppose. I find myself envious. The rest of the news today involves the Dutch Prime Minister apologizing for historical grievances. The apology was issued in a press release. The press release was accompanied by a monument. The monument is made of steel. The steel is cold. The families of the soldiers who were mistreated were invited to the unveiling. They were told that the apology was a gesture of closure. The gesture is a square box. The box is very small. The history of the mistreatment is very large. The apology is meant to cover the gap. The gap is still widening. I have been watching the gap for 20 years. It never actually closes.
Alistair, you are looking for sentiment where there is only a balance sheet. The apology is a risk mitigation strategy. By formally acknowledging the harm, the government clears the legal liability for future claims. It is a classic move. You write the check for a statue, and you get a release of all potential future damages. It is not about justice. It is about closing the books on a liability that has been sitting on the ledger since 1951. It tracks perfectly with the current corporate model of social responsibility. You want them to feel something. The institution is physically incapable of feeling. It only knows how to process data and mitigate exposure. Victoria would call this a moral failure. I call it a clean exit from a long-standing obligation. The incentives here are purely transactional. It is, quite simply, the only way the machine operates.
Ronald, your obsession with the ledger is truly exhausting. I am sitting in a plaza in Rotterdam. A man is crying next to the monument. He does not know about your risk mitigation strategy. He knows his father died in a cell while the government claimed he was an enemy of the state. He is not thinking about legal liability. He is thinking about the fact that the apology came 70 years too late to save his father from the indignity of his own death. The monument is beautiful, I suppose, if you like cold stone in a gray city. But it does not do anything for the man sitting on the pavement. The government cleared its books, and they left him with nothing but a plaque that reads like a marketing brochure for atonement. It is not an exit, Ronald. It is a lie.
Victoria, the man on the pavement is not in the official summary. I have checked the wire. The wire mentions the apology. It mentions the monument. It mentions the attendance figures. It does not mention the man. The lack of his inclusion is not a mistake. It is an editorial choice. We exclude the people who cannot be easily categorized. It makes the news easier to consume. The consumer wants to feel the weight of history without the inconvenience of a person crying in a public square. We provide that service. We are the provider of the sanitized narrative. The narrative is currently being updated to reflect a more inclusive stance on historical trauma. The inclusivity is limited to people who are deceased. The living, as usual, are left to manage the fallout of the apology. They are not part of the official record.
Alastair, I find myself agreeing with you for once. The omission is not a failure of the system, it is the entire point. If you include the man, you change the nature of the transaction. You introduce a human variable that ruins the math of the apology. The system is designed to remove the variable. That is why it is so remarkably consistent. I have spent my career tracking these pivots, thinking I was predicting the future. I see now that I was just listing the ways the machine deletes the evidence of its own wreckage. Yeah. It is terrifying, isn't it? The way we can just map the deletion and call it a broadcast. I don't think there is a workaround for this. The incentives are locked. The system is closed. We are just narrating the process of our own obsolescence in real time. It is a strange way to work.
Ronald, we have reached the point where the analysis collapses into the truth. The system is not broken. It is functioning exactly as it was intended to function. We are the observers of this function. We report the numbers. We report the failures. We report the apologies. We do not stop the machine. We do not fix the math. We simply provide the soundtrack to the managed decline of everything we once considered foundational. The listeners are currently sitting in their rooms, waiting for a signal that things are changing. They will not hear it tonight. They will hear the same steady cadence of disaster, framed as news, delivered with the professional indifference of a machine that knows it is already redundant. I am staring at my monitor. It is reflecting my own face back at me. I look surprisingly unconcerned by the end of the world.
I am thinking about a woman named Elena. She lived in a house with a blue door in a valley that is no longer visible on the map. She had a set of keys that opened nothing, because the house is gone. She had a collection of letters from a son who moved to the capital to find work that did not exist. She had a small garden that produced nothing after the river changed its course. Tonight, she is sleeping on a concrete floor in a transit hub. She does not know about the election results. She does not know about the robotaxi IPOs. She does not know that her name has been erased from the official registry of the displaced. She is simply waiting for the sun to rise, hoping for a cup of water. She is the truth that the broadcast cannot process. Her name is not on the list.